What's up, everybody, and welcome to Skill Diff, the show where we have not only differing opinions, but differing skill sets. I'm your host, Dylan Sinnott. Today I have my beautiful host beside of me.
My name is Patrick Holifield, and I'm just happy to be here. It's an honor to be here on the first episode of Skill Diff with you.
Heck yeah, I mean, we got a lot of cool stuff that's happening in the gaming world. I mean, CDL is kicking off for their Major 2 that's coming up with the Optic Texas team. And then there's another game that happened last week. What was that?
It's the best FPS in the world. It's called Valorant.
Oh, really? I thought it was Counter-Strike. You had me going there.
Wrong.
But let's hop into it. The first topic we're going to go over is going to be, did T1 win or did G2 choke?
Okay, well, this one is a very easy one. It was a G2 throw, 100%. No disrespect to T1. I think they're a fantastic team, and they got fantastic players. But G2 just did not come prepared, unfortunately. Leaf, one of their star players, who unfortunately was not performing. I know he released a tweet talking about how his mother had passed and stuff, so my condolences to him. And I know that's a tough thing to go through, but unfortunately he wasn't there. Neither was Jonah P., both going pretty negative in the series with low ADRs per round. I think Jonah P. had the lowest out of everybody in the series. If I'm not mistaken, it was 105. So they clearly didn't play their performance. We all saw that round where they're diffusing. He lets him kill him while he's diffusing. They lose by 0.8 seconds on there. That would have been match point. They'd have been on match point if not for that. Fantastic. G2 at their peak beat T1 any day of the week. It's unfortunate that they didn't show up, but that's just that's competitive FPSs for you.
100%. I mean, I don't disagree with the sentiment because, I mean, like some of the stats we wrote down is Trent had 21 2Ks. Giacomo had 15 2Ks and another 11 3Ks. They had 10 clutches. Over half were greater than a 2v1. But that's why this is not at all a G2 throw, because T1 is just a better team. I mean, it's simple as that. Like, no disrespect to G2, but, like, they have star-studded players. They have a star-studded roster, and they got a bunch of superstars. They do not know how to play together. T1 won the Pistols, they won the Econs, and they won the Thrifties, all of which are games that you have to play together. You have to play as a unit. You have to move as a unit. You have to double peek, double chow. None of this solo nonsense. Whenever you look at teamwork trade-out plays, there was not a single positive player on the whole G2 roster. They're just all playing solo kills. I mean, they're getting 2Ks, 3Ks, 4Ks, and that's great. But at the end of the day, that's not how you play as a team. That's not how you win team games. And this isn't about individual stats. At the end of the day, it's about winning as a team, and one team won. And for that, I mean, I think that was the better team. So, I mean, that's why, to me, big props to T1. I mean, the biggest surprise to me is when you look at it, it's like the initial engages just were always, G2 is always praying. You always had Giacomo trying to push forward. You had Trent trying to push forward. You had Leaf trying to push forward. And it's like, yeah, they would maybe get 2 or 3Ks or their first blood, and it's a 5v4. And then how do you convert that round? So at the end of the day, no surprise to me. I mean, we said this kind of going into it. I think G2 is a star-studded roster, but I think they would do better with less talent if they played more like a team. And until they fix that, I don't expect them to win anytime soon.
That's crazy, and it's perfectly okay to be wrong. G2 is a caliber team, championship level caliber team, and I'm sure we will see that coming up at Masters Toronto.
Sure.
But anyway, speaking of T1, Meteor was named MVP for the tournament, and it was a little bit dicey. A lot of people seem to not agree with it, and so I'm going to ask you the question, Meteor.
I mean, I think it's crazy because, like, when you look at this roster, like, top to bottom, any one of those 5 players probably could have deserved it, and which is insane. I mean, that's how well they play together. I mean, Buzz played fantastic at different times. Also, you had Izu was looking unstoppable, and then obviously Meteor came with some crazy clutches. It's interesting because I kind of like that they gave the award to somebody who is probably net neutral the whole time. They were never a crazy off the Richter scale. Like, at times you saw Izu getting these crazy clutches and awesome plays. But then they also were never completely absent and not there during an entire match. So, I mean, it was kind of the story of being Mr. Consistent at the end of the day. But candidly, like, to me, there's a little bit of, I think somebody from the losing team possibly could have won that as well. I mean, we talked about it earlier. Both Trent and Giacomo, like, they slayed out. I mean, it was insane how well they played. And when you think about what does most valuable mean, it's like, does most valuable mean you have to win? If it means you have to win, then I think Meteor is the best candidate. But if it means best player in the lobby, I definitely think the best player in the lobby and probably the 3 best players in the lobby were all on the G2 side. So it really just depends on what you want to give that award to. Because I would have had no disrespect if they said Giacomo would have got it for the, the ace 4v1 crazy clutch and all the 2Ks. Like, I mean, it was an unbelievable run from those guys. And again, no disrespect even on the T1 squad, but it's like they had the probably, 4th through 8th best player on the team at any given time, or in the lobby at any given time.
Yeah, I mean, I think Meteor is a good choice. I think that MVP usually should go to the winning team, but I do think that if they would have picked somebody like Jajamo, who I'm pretty sure dominated the whole lobby, I think he had 103 kills that series, would definitely be cool for him to get MVP. But I think it's fantastic that Meteor got MVP because he's not the duelist player. I think a lot of the fan base typically likes to put like duelists and stuff like this on a pedestal because they usually go in and get the flashy kills. But Meteor was doing this on agents like Viper. He had an insane clutch on Split, which was on game 4, where he aced G2 and he killed like 3 of them by himself with literally like 3 seconds left on the clock. I mean, he was just making plays constantly. He knows how to play around in his smokes. He also had the highest score line for his entire team with 153 ADR, average damage per round, or whatever it's called. I fucked up. But no, it's fine. But he had the best on his team of a team that actually went negative, which was kind of funny.
Totally.
Because I think that's kind of cool, too, that he wins MVP.
Yep.
And yet their whole team, nobody went positive, but yet they're able to clutch out the win barely in a close 100%.
Match. And that, to me, is one of the things I'd kind of mentioned earlier when we look at, like, the entry frag and the ability to be either first blood or first blooded. It's like you have a team that literally is negative overall on the breakdown to where nobody on the team is positive. When you look at the G2 side, 3 of the 5 players are violently positive. 2 of the 5 players were violently negative. So, I mean, there was 2 MIAs. But then you look at, like, First Blood versus First Blooded, and it's like it's so heavily favored in the T1 just because there wasn't a lot of trade kills. There wasn't a lot of that stuff from G2. It was either, lots of 1v1s. And when you think about 1v1, like, yeah, I'd probably take Jajamo. I'd probably take Trent. I'd probably take Leaf in a 1v1. But at the end of the day, it's 5v5. And if you can play around those and flank those guys, it's, it's definitely a different kind of atmosphere. And I think to your point, Meteor is like, the ability to run those little Viper ults, secure sites, walls to break things off. I mean, we saw a lot of it with the Spectrals as well, but like the ability for the whole team to be able to, separate, divide, and conquer, like that is insanely valuable. So very deserving. I do think that leads us into our next question though, which is what is your biggest surprise as we look back on the whole event? Like what's the one thing that stands out to you as a shocker?
This was going to be a difficult one because I think it's going to be a couple. I think the first one I want to touch on is probably just the disappointment I have with Sentinels. And that is a big surprise because going into VCT Masters Bangkok, I was expecting them to do a lot better than what they finished. They were doing pretty well in the kickoff tournament. Even G2, of course, went on to the finals to barely lose. Sentinels held their own against them in their finals match for the kickoff. So that was a surprise that they kind of fell so hard, but also the fact that EDG, the reigning champs, who started off Bangkok super strong, dominating, beat G2 2-1, dominated the rest of their competition, then just kind of whimpered out. Their games against T1 and all that were just, it looks like they forgot how to play the game, unfortunately, totally. And it was a surprise.
Yeah, 100%. For me, it's actually a little bit of both of that, right? Like, I think going in, everyone was saying that America might be the most dominant region. We're probably going to be able to compete with China. But literally nobody was betting on the Pacific teams at all. Like everyone had them. I mean, DRX and SKT both. Nobody really had them even making it out of the bracket, much less going the whole way. I mean, I pulled a quote up from their first initial match. It was, Team Vitality will win comfortably. If T1 plays perfectly, it will be hard for them to even make it out of groups. That's like literally the prediction from all the analysts. Like nobody had any faith in this. But when you look at that roster, like that is a superstar roster. And that was like, we knew that was a superstar roster. It's like, those are all big name players. I mean, sure, they're not going to put up crazy stat lines like Jogamo. They're not going to put up Leaf numbers or anything like that. But, these are incredibly talented players who have been incredibly successful. So to see them finally get it done, I think is really impressive. But the biggest surprise to me is more, from people like us that sit at a desk and talk about this and the hosts and the casters and everybody else having no faith in them. It was like, it finally feels like a dark horse did something really impressive and actually got it all the way done. Like, it's not that they made the finals. They made the finals and won. Like, that's crazy to me.
It is really crazy, and it was a true underdog story for them to be able to come through and win, and I'm happy for them, even though they did beat G2, which is unfortunate. But that leads us to our next topic here, which is about committing Sudoku. Okay?
Sudoku, yeah.
A lot of people have a problem with people jumping off the map off the beginning to just end the round.
Sure.
Usually happens on pistol rounds where the other team has force ball and there's really no chance of them winning, so they just jump off, gives them no ult points or anything like that. And the community seems to be divided on this. My question is, what do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a tough question because at the end of the day, like when you look at the people who are playing this game, that's probably not an enjoyable experience for a player. It's also probably not an enjoyable experience to you, the person who's sitting at home watching the game either. I mean, at the end of the day, they do it because it saves them money, saves them ult orb, saves a little bit of risk. There's no need to help let somebody get an ace and then automatically have their ult in round 3. So it does make sense. I think there's the easiest fix ever for this because, when you look at real sports, you don't want to see weird glitches like exploiting a holding penalty in the NFL or stuff like that. Like those things always get patched out pretty quick. The easiest solution for this, if Riot actually cares, you just make it so that you don't make any money if you SD just across the whole game. Like falling off the map, no money. Cool, you don't get anything for next round. That would solve this problem pretty much effective immediately. You just wouldn't SD anymore. And I do think that it's not a good look. People that are watching that tournament for the first time, whenever they see that, they don't understand why that round happened the way that it did. The players obviously aren't playing, so they're probably not enjoying it either. So to me, I think it's a very, very win-win, and it's like there's no net positive for it. It looks bad on the game, and like I just think it's something you should remove. I know that not everybody cares about it. I'm not like super passionate, like this ruined my experience, but I do think it looks dumb, looks bad on camera. And frankly, I think Riot are keeping it in though, solely because we're talking about it, people are tweeting about it, and at the end of the day, any PR is good PR.
That is the truth. For me, it's basically like I think it's something that they can't really do anything to get rid of. If they do something like you said, where make it where you earn no money or something, it's like then it's just a punishment for players who didn't accidentally fall off. I mean, we see it all the time in competitive matches where maybe somebody misses a jump or they jump and collide and fall off the map. It would be very punishing.
But it should be.
Yeah, I mean,
you're dumb.
It should be, but mistakes happen. So it's like, to me, it also speeds up the round, and this may be like a minority take, but it's like for me, a lot of times those rounds come down to, okay, this team plants the bomb, and then it's just kind of a wait factor. They want to die to the bomb, so the same effect occurs. They don't get an ult point or something, and so then we have to wait the whole timer for it all. As well, this, they just get it over with. Just jump off, round's over, we're moving on. It isn't a spectacle, but it's funny.
To me, the counter to that is some of the most memorable rounds of this entire tournament were anti-ecos. They were forced buying into. We saw EDG do this before they kind of whimpered out. Like when they played T1, they would win the pistol, and then the next round, if T1 wins, they would just counter buy, run Spectres, run it right down them, and like that's the easy way to get a crazy round win, and like that's the spectacle to see, and like that's something you want. Like at the end of the day, we're trying to play a video game here. We're not trying to just off ourselves on a map. So it's like if the goal of the game is to play, then I would want to see more things being played. And to me, it's like those, you have guns, I have pistols, or you have guns, I have crappy SMGs. Like that's an exciting play into still. And like those are the rounds where like heroes are made. Those are the rounds where like comebacks start. And like it's just weird that we just forgive and kind of lose that piece. But I do want to take this into the final question we have for the VCT side is, what are your takeaways from the event? What are we going to be looking forward to? I know VCT is going to be starting back up pretty soon. So what are your thoughts as we move forward into this Valorant world?
I think we're going to look forward to a very, very good season of Valorant. That's for sure, because based on just Bangkok alone, these teams are able to compete at a high level, and these games are close. G2 and T1 obviously had multiple games going to overtime. We had many, many overtime series throughout this whole Bangkok, which just shows that even though T1 won, that these teams are still very close. And as they get their rosters together more, they hang out more, they get better as a team, and they're working together, teams are only going to improve. So T1 might be super dominant in Toronto, or it might still be close, or maybe Vitality comes in and swoops in, or EDG gets their stuff back together and they're the ones. At this rate, it's hard to tell who will win any tournament. So for me, that's the biggest event takeaway, is that these teams are this high caliber this early in the season. So I look forward to a fantastic season for Worlds and for Toronto.
You're going to hate this. I have two. You might disagree with both, but the first one is I think this is the beginning of the end for the U.S. region. I don't want it to be. But it's one of those where G2 comes up a little bit short, and I will agree they're probably the better players, objectively the worst team like of those two. Sentinels didn't look good. I have a sneaking suspicion that Sentinels are going to go more in the path of TSM and League than they are anything else, which might be really good for jersey sales, might be really good for content, but I don't really think it's going to be good for World Championships. So I do hope that USA isn't on a downward trend, because I now think Korea is going to probably continue to look pretty good. With the Pacific region, the China region is always going to be good. And then EMEA is also still really good. So, I mean, I think it's going to be hard for US to kind of stand at the top. Felt like a moment where G2 could kind of take the mantle and run with it. and they dropped it in the passing, and I hope they get back, but I'm not confident they will. You agree or disagree?
I don't agree with your statement at all. Obviously, the Americas are a really talented force when it comes to VCT. I know you're stuck in your like Counter-Strike ways where you think America doesn't stand a chance, but I mean, EG won Worlds 2 years ago.
Sure.
And they still stand a chance in every single tournament they come into. They just finished second in this one. And the other NA teams are only going to get better. 100 Thieves might show up in this next one.
Sure.
And maybe it's not Sentinels. They're also a strong caliber team.
I mean, but the number 2 seed out of the Pacific region at the end of the day beat everybody, which is crazy. I mean, I think the other regions are also going to get better too. And that's where I'm curious what we're going to look for as we kind of progress through the talents. And then the last thing I wanted to call out that is a takeaway is when it comes to the broadcast, this is something that you know that I've kind of harped on at times being somewhat variable.
Boy.
So it is a little bit of a variation. But I do think one thing as we look forward to doing more Valorant broadcasts and otherwise is something that we could ask of Riot and all publishing companies is there was a big moment during it where they used the explicit term that people refer to as GD. Got a lot of flack on Twitter for it. It's one of those sorts that's probably unnecessary, but it is interesting that happens with Riot, who tends to be more of like a PC company that it does tread a little bit more lightly than most. So I'm curious for a final takeaway. What's your thoughts on explicits in the esports and stay go? How do you feel?
This one is kind of might sound hypocritical coming from me, but I think the occasional GD or any other language, as long as not super excessive, I think it's totally fine. I get that casters sometimes slip. You get caught up in the moment. It's hype. Words come out of your mouth. That happened to me a couple minutes ago. It's just something that happens. And so I think it's perfectly fine. And I feel like they've lessened it up. I mean, they even show replays of people shooting bodies now. Before, a couple years ago, you was getting a $10,000 fine for that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough because I actually feel like I'm on the other end of the hypocrisy here because normally I'm big team, let everybody do everything, do whatever they want, like it's cool for the drama. I do think stuff like that specifically is kind of tough because, you know, there's 1 billion people watching esports right now, which is a significant number. Of that, about a third of them are sub 21. So I could understand parents not wanting to let their kids watch that because of something that dramatic. In the spectrum of explicits, that one does feel like it's more on the dramatic end. So I do think that'll inhibit a little bit of the audience and pool. Like, I mean, for example, if we said that right now, YouTube is going to feel strongly about that. So therefore, we would not be shown as much. So it's interesting that a game we're trying to globalize, you would kind of start restricting it. And then also you got to factor in, you know, all transparency. The most Christians probably don't love that statement. And that is still the primary religion of both most of the United States and probably the world. It's probably still the most leading religion. So it is tough when it comes to stuff like that because I don't think it adds any value. If they don't use that, nobody cares. Now, the shooting bodies, you know, we need to be showing the shooting bodies.
Well, we can keep that.
Yeah, we can't get rid of that. That's not going anywhere.
But the GDs are too far.
That's too far, but the bodies, that's got to stay. But we're going to run to a quick little break. We'll be right back after a quick message.
Welcome back, everybody, to Skill Diff, part of the GGN Network. Be sure to check out some of our other talk shows and other content that we have if you love anything esports related. Now, back to the most important things, which would be CDL. Yes. Absolutely. The Minor 2 qualifiers for the Major 2 went on over the weekend with the grand finals culminating in the LA Thieves winning in a very close matchup against Surge. And that's just going to lead us right into our first topic, which is the Los Angeles Thieves. Are they the team?
I mean, I think right now they might be the team of the league, but I don't think they're not a dynasty. They're not unbeatable. They're not like crazy. I think it's a 3-team race right now. I mean, I think 100 Thieves. I think Vancouver Surge, who I'm certain I'm going to call Seattle Surge at least 100 more times. And then the Atlanta FaZe. I think those 3 are probably in a slight tier of their own. But, I mean, they look sloppy. They look messy. The game was, you know, far from perfect. It was another best of 7 that went to 7. It was a pretty hard-fought road to get there. But I do think those 3 teams are kind of in a class of their own. But, I mean, at the end of the day, when we look at Seattle Surge, they went from non-existent all the way to the finals and took them to about a best of 7 all the way to Game 7. So, you know, if you were the team, you'd put them to bed. No FaZe, no problem. You should just be dominating. So, I mean, I think they're a very good team. I think they're even a very dominant team, but the league right now just looks like there's a ton of mediocrity. It does not look like it's consistently good. So it's hard for me to say they're the team. I think they're a good team, but I think there's probably 3 good teams and then a lot of probably below good teams.
Well, there definitely is quite a below 3 bad teams. That's for sure.
For sure.
For me, Los Angeles, I mean, I think at the moment they're the team. I agree with you a little bit that, like, it is kind of a close range. Surge really has just come out of nowhere and taken that 3rd spot. They've really just kind of kicked people like Optic down to the curb pretty hard. And FaZe. But for me, LA Thieves, whenever they play, they play. And this one went to round 7, or game 7, excuse me. But they really improved on a lot of the things that I talked about that they were struggling with before, which was mainly their search and destroy,
Sure.
which they were able to pull out because they played 3 search and destroys, and they were able to win 2 of those, which was the deciding factor for the game. Obviously, Game 7 Skyline, S&D. Nowhere near like it was against FaZe. Improvement on that map. They need to work on their hard point a little bit. Surge kind of schooled them on the hard point,
Sure.
especially on Hacienda. That one was a little rough. But I think those 4 players, Ghostly, Envoy, Hydra, Scrap, whatever, top caliber team, I think they will easily win Major 2 as long as they just keep it up and work on their search and destroy a tad bit more. Because Control, can't nobody beat them on Control.
Yeah, I mean, it does feel similar to how we talked about earlier with G2 when it came to Valorant of, like, I think a lot of these players are really, really good. I think the problem is they just don't always play as a team. They don't always play as a cohesive unit. So that's why it's, like, really hard for me to say that, like, you know, they're in that, like, dynasty. They're going to be the best team this year. Because, like, when I think about what team's going to win champs, it's like we're so far from that. Like, you know, the fact that a Surge can swap one player in and automatically be competitive, it's like, you know, a lot of things could happen even before Major 2. The other big knock against 100 Thieves is they often on LAN don't always clutch up and get the job done. So I'm curious to see how that performs. You know, I want to see Scrap. I want to see him full body as toxic as possible when we come down to Dallas. I think the next one is the Optic Dallas Major. I think that's in about 2 weeks. So I'm excited for that to see what that's going to look like. But on that note, we're going to have the Vancouver Surge show up. I'm not going to say as the team to beat, but the team that everybody's watching. You know, you think they're the real deal, or you think it's just fly by night?
It's kind of a tough one to tell if they're the real deal or not, because it does seem like they basically came out of nowhere. They went from being a team that was floating near the bottom to all of a sudden they're in the contender for the top 3 teams in the league. And was that because of the player swap? Neptune coming in? I mean, he did really well in this series against Los Angeles. I have him here. But the main thing is Azua, I'm going to butcher his name, Azua and Nasty, both with monster KDs and Slayer ratings in that series, just completely obliterating 100 Thieves, LA Thieves on hardpoint. I think the Hacienda, the first game right there, when I watched that, I honestly didn't have hopes for LA after that.
Totally.
Like, the rotations on that, the way they were playing, the teamwork was just like top caliber. And I was one who was just like, yeah, LA's got this on hardpoint. They got it on Control. It's just search is the main thing that they're struggling on. And they made them look a little bad on hardpoint. So totally. They're for real.
And that's for one of the most dominant teams in hardpoint right now in the entire CDL, which is crazy that they were kind of able to come to it. But again, just like the VCT thing, it feels like the opposites of you have a team of superstars, you have a team that's playing as a team. But I do think, piggyback on what you're saying, like Nasty is insanely good. Nasty is like one of the highest Slayer rating players there is, but the number 1 player right now in Slayer rating with a 98, who is ahead of Hydra, is in fact Neptune. And it's crazy that one at the beginning of the season, that's a player that's not on a roster. That's a player that's not playing. So they brought him in, obviously. But that one roster move made such a significant change. But that team, like you said, they're playing as a unit. Like their rotations are on point. Their movement's on point. I do think their S&D, it's more of their strats in S&D. Like they were very late quite a few times trying to hit points. They would get down to that 20-ish second range when they'd have to try to do late hits. Just felt really messy. Some of those things they can clean up, though. I mean, this roster's not been playing a ton together, so they're only going to get better throughout the season. But I do think, in my opinion, I would say behind Atlanta FaZe, like I would say the Seattle Surge team is, or Vancouver Surge team is probably the team to beat other than Atlanta. I mean, I think 100 Thieves is going to for sure be there. They're going to be competitive. I think right now they're probably at the limit of their skill set. Whereas I think the Surge haven't quite hit that ceiling. They still probably got a good bit of growth left in them. I hope the Thieves do too, because I don't want this to get out of hand. I do feel like what normally happens with FaZe is FaZe comes out of nowhere, they then dominate, and then it's a boring season. So we hope we don't get that again. But all in all, I think they're the real deal.
And that's what I'm saying. That's why I'm so glad that the Surge are coming to play, whether that's because they picked up Neptune or because they're just finally clicking together. Because we don't want to see no one-sided, one team dominates, because that just doesn't make for a fun series to watch. But speaking of teams that are not doing so hot right now,
Or
everybody's favorite, the Green Wall, baby. Green Wall.
It's fallen.
Yeah, is it the Berlin Wall now? Like, what's going on? Are they dead?
Dude, I think so. I mean, we might be Rip the GOAT, Rip CDL. Like, it's not looking good. I mean, it's been tough since Scump left, if we're being super honest. It's felt inconsistent since that's happened, and then especially through this whole season, it's felt like there's not been, like, a solid rock. I mean, Hook came in. There was a lot of distress as that, led to that decision. They've now swapped him back. But I do think Pred's not really kind of the focal point of that anymore. I mean, Kenny has not looked good. He looked very inconsistent. I think is one of the lower rated KDs of any competitive team. I mean, there's some teams in the league right now that aren't competitive. But speaking of teams in the league that aren't competitive, that team for the first 3 maps versus Optic looked close. Like the first hard point, they almost let the Falcons win what I think is their first hard point ever since they started playing Respawn. And that's insane that the team that is capable of winning world championships at the end of the day comes down and almost loses to the Falcons on hardpoint and drops a map to the Falcons, which is crazy. Dude, it didn't look good. It looks real bad. I definitely think that in the current capacity, if they do not change the roster, like this season's probably chalked.
And that's just tough to hear because everybody loves the Green Wall.
Sure.
And, you compared Sentinels to like TSM with all that. It's like, is this what Optic's becoming, basically? Because, they did what they were able to finally pull out the win against the Falcons. They did drop a map, and like you said, it was close. And that's not something to be proud of. If you want to be a top caliber team, no offense to the Falcons, but they obviously are not the best team in the league right now. So being close and on their level is not good to see. And Kenny, like you said, unfortunately, I think he went, and this wasn't against the Falcons, but it was against Toronto, went 0.70 through the series. And I mean, it's just at this point, I don't know what we're doing anymore. So I think, like you said, maybe some roster changes. Like you said, Pred's doing pretty good. But I don't know. I don't want to just dog on Kenny. But, I mean, we either got to get him back into boot camp, get him strengthened up, or unfortunately, I think we're going to have to make a little bit of adjustments because right now they're at the bottom. And that's not where you want Optic to be at.
100%. I mean, there's the joke of Optic drop the T, put a 7 in there. And, again, for the Scump thing, I mean, they've looked good since Scump has departed. And at times they even looked great. But I think the biggest, inconsistency is when Scump was there, it's you understand this is about family, this is about media, this is about content, this is about, that empire that Hex has built. But it might not always be about winning. Well, now you don't have that. So it's it feels like we need to kind of start going in the direction of winning. We need to be focused on that because, we're not getting the same kind of quality. I mean, Scump still got the co-string, which is awesome. But it's hey, now why don't we lock in and try to, look to winning? And, I mean, I think Kenny is definitely a point to look at, but I mean, I also think Dashy is not too far behind him. I mean, right now, if I'm general manager of this organization, I'm looking at, I think Pred's being solid. I think Shotzi, Staple needs to be there. Bring back Hook the Nuke, and then look for somebody. I mean, the way the game currently is being played, there's so much hybrid play and flex play. You could bring in, a younger player like Fame, or you could bring in an old vet, a Clay or somebody like that to try to help kind of navigate the waters and still put a face on the org. I think you got to do something. I think you just can't sit here and just keep letting this happen, right?
No, you can't because it's looking bad.
100%. And then on the note of looking bad, this minor, awesome gameplay. We got some crazy clutches, some exciting moments. We went all the way to Game 7. But dude, Activision, what are we doing, man? The most important match that we knew was going to be a best of 7, I don't know, for months since the last one, we don't have graphics prepared for. We got weird boxes. The game, we have, I believe it's Lucky and an S&D gets a first blood and then just times out of the game. So we have to remake the lobby. And then it, I think, ends up going to a game, round 11. So it's we keep having these weird moments, and it's from my loose understanding, is the sentiment is, well, we're working on the next game. And it's we're not even halfway through with this one. What are we doing? So it's when we look at Activision, do we think they're self-sabotaging? What do we think this is?
I mean, if you look at it from the outside in, it does look like some form of self-sabotage, unfortunately. I know you like to always rail on me about VCT and their production and their broadcast, but I mean, some of the stuff that flew on this is like, I don't even think they would let slide. I mean,
100%.
I mean, at one point I was watching and the graphic, it just says best of 5. We're in a best of 7. All 6 blocks are filled up. It's like, if you're just tuning in, like, you have no idea what's going on. What game we're on. Multiple times they had it wrong where we're on like game 5, but they only show like 3 maps have been scored. It was honestly like an amateur show going on out there. And it's sad to see because they do some cool stuff. Like, I really love like the draw-in conclusions they do, like between the matches and all that. They have a lot of talent and a lot of high-tier stuff they do, but for some reason it's like for this one, it's like they're just asleep at the wheel. And it felt like that for the desk too and everything. I don't know if that's just the mood they were going for, but it just seemed like everybody was just half-baked going in there, just like, yeah, let's just get this over with. LA, congratulations, you won.
Yeah, I mean,
not exciting.
For sure. I mean, to me, the tough point is like when I look at the talent on there, like, Shift and Study, Common the final one. Like, dude, I love those guys. Like Alan Donofrio, totally our boy. Like, love that man to death. And it's like, I think that cast isn't the problem at all. I think the game isn't the problem at all because like the two teams are close. Like, it's really exciting to watch, but like it's starting to feel like Halo where it's like we're losing the player base. People aren't playing the game, just like Halo. The esports is actually in a weirdly good competitive spot, but then it's like, the publisher behind it's like the minor tournaments are weird. Like the player cam thing feels odd. Like you've got Neptune who doesn't have a player cam up, so like you keep showing that graphic instead of like fixing it or doing something else. Like there's just a lot of like nuanced things that, like you said, it feels like they're asleep at the wheel, and it's like it honestly feels like they don't care. This is a league that a couple of years ago was supposed to be like, I think, a $20 million buy-in per franchise, and this is the product we're getting. It's insane to me. I would much rather go back to the MLG, CMG, UMG traveling circus that we had to do for 2009 to 2015, because like back then, before we had the CDL, we had the CWL, then before that we just had MLG, and it's like, dude, that era was so fun. You had other people putting on the events, and when you're competing, when we had MLG and UMG competing with one another, the product got so good so quick, and it just feels like that's not happening anymore. Activision, like you said, just asleep at the wheel, and honestly, it just hurts because it's like you don't want to see Halo in that spot, you don't want to see COD in that spot, and like again, the casting is great. The teams are competitive, and like I think it's great that nobody's dominant. But at the end of the day, the product looks bad, and it's not on the player's fault. It's not on the casher's fault. It's probably not on the production team fault. They're probably doing the best with what they got. But at the end of the day, it's like, dude, Activision, wake up! Come on, we can't let this thing go down like this.
Yeah, we gotta get it together because CDL, one of the great olds, still standing strong.
100%.
We gotta take care of those.
100%, 100%.
We can't let them slide. So Activision, step your game up.
This is going to be our last segment. This is going to be called Buy or Sell. It's going to be a little bit more rapid fire. We're just going to quickly go down some cool esports news from the past week. First thing we're going to hop directly into is the Mongols are, I believe, the first ever government-funded esports organization. With the recent success, their country has decided to fund them with salaries, expedited visas, and like travel incentives to basically help them stay at the top ranks of Counter-Strike to help better represent their country. Cool? Not cool? What are your thoughts?
I think that's a buy, 100%. I think it's cool that the government is funding an esports team. In the future, does it lead to maybe something potentially bad? Who knows? But the fact that they've taken enough interest in it to actually fund it to represent them, I think it's totally cool. It'd be cool if we had teams that we could state fund for our leagues, or even for just like going into international tournaments, funding like the top teams to participate, kind of like the Olympics. I think would be totally cool. What are your thoughts on it?
100%. I'm big team buy as well. I mean, as like unmasculine as it sounds, dude, this is heartwarming. Like, it is so cool to see that, like, this isn't a huge country. This country, for the most part, isn't a place we would frequently think of. So it is very cool to see them do something to help put their name on the map with a team of players that's really good. I mean, I think they're 13th or 12th right now in the overall rankings for CS2. So it's really cool to say, like, hey, we have this thing that's really good. We're going to strike while the iron's hot. We're going to promote them. That's going to help promote us. That should be a win for everybody. And I mean, frankly, other than history books, I don't think too many people are talking about Mongolia. So it is really cool to kind of see this get promoted and put them in a new light. And I think it's a huge win.
Totally. All right, back on the G2. they also had a little bit of trouble in league. Some would say maybe a throw in the LEC.
Yeah.
Do we have some concerns about G2 here?
I mean, we'll talk into the league a little bit more in depth in some of our other shows, but right now they were on 6 straight going into this. They've won 12 of the first 16 championships since the LEC has been started. I mean, yes, winning is the norm for them, so it is a little bit odd. But at the end of the day, I think Carmine Corp is, they look really good. They did beat the crap out of them in the finals. I think as we get closer to Worlds, it'll be more of a contention, but as much as we want to see NA or EU compete at the world stage at League of Legends, it's been a minute since we had a lot of faith in those. So, I think G2 will get it back on pace in the EU side of things, but internationally, I don't know that anybody's up to the Asian stuff right now.
I'm on board with the G2, thinking that they're going to do just fine. A little bit of fluke. KC dominates them. It's unfortunate, just like T1 beating them. Valorant, unfortunate. G2, top-tier organization here, coming out of Germany. I love them. I love my Germans. Love their cars, everything. So they're going to get they're going to get their stuff together in league. Yeah, unfortunately, the Koreans do dominate it, but I still like to hold out hope. I've been holding out hope since like season 2 with TSM rocking it. Okay? Yeah. And I will not let them get away with winning every single one. Faker, he's got to retire at some point.
He does. I don't know if Bjergsen's coming back though, brother.
Well, we're going to have some new talent that's going to come in, and G2 might be the ones that have it. I think, obviously, they're going to do fine, and they might perform on the international. Who knows?
Sure. On that note, though, we'll want to talk quickly. The internet does not love studio playoffs. Riot's notorious for this. The LEC piece is, they're playing this in front of a crowd of 50 people. It's basically the clap crowd that's hanging out with Jimmy Fallon on a Tuesday night. Do you think that these organizations, are we buying or selling the studio thing, is better for the game or worse for the game?
That's a tough one. I think I want to say buy. I mean, unfortunately, I don't think it's worth it enough for them to like employ it in any other way, whether it be rent out a smaller stadium or something for the finals. I think just the studio finals is perfectly fine. Have the clap crowd there. A lot of people watch from online. It's perfectly fine. As long as you have the solid broadcast and everything, just to have enough hype in there. I mean, it is unfortunate that some of these games might be like extreme bangers and you can only hear like a little golf clap in the background.
Yeah,
it doesn't really create that hype.
Not at all.
But all in all, I love their studios. I think they look fantastic, and I think they're perfect for the games.
I think, Riot, you have an infinite sum of money, but I want you to listen to me, okay? The problem that I have with this nonsense is, why will we not license our game out? ESL, PGL, Blast, there's so many people that are more than capable of doing an excellent job of running these events. If you want smaller events, let them run the events. You run Worlds. Like, I think the concert they do at Worlds is unbelievable. But this studio nonsense has got to go. Like, could you imagine, like, the smallest event in Europe is going to be insane. Like, if there's 500 people in a PGL event in Cluj-Napoca for CS2, which is a place that previous to this event I've not heard of, the crowd was insane. Crowd was insane. Not a major, just another event. Insane. Like, let other people run your events. Riot. Let other people run your events. That's it. Sell this nonsense.
Well, that was an easy one for you, wasn't it?
It was.
Here's another fantastic one, buy or sell, coming out of a little lesser-known game when it comes to esports. Pokemon. Number 1 worldwide, but esports-wise, not on the top. But this guy named WolfClick comes out after winning and just delivers this amazing speech.
Just play the clip.
That was such a crazy set. Just what's going through your mind right now? International champion.
Honestly, I'm just thinking about the scope. There were 1,400 players who signed up for this tournament, who entered this tournament, the biggest official Pokemon tournament of all time. 1,400 players trained their Pokemon, traveled to London, practiced with a friend, worked on their team. 1,400 people showed up to this tournament hoping and dreaming to win the entire thing. But it wasn't enough!
Yes, that right there was fantastic. So for me, the question is after hearing that, is he the GOAT?
Absolutely. Buy. Auto buy. Like, immediately buy it now on eBay. We're in. Like, this is insane. We need more of this in esports. I think we're so numb to the fact, and this is, again, not in any type of negative way, Asia wins so much stuff in esports. And they are the nicest people on the planet. Like, they are so appreciative. They are so thankful of everything. Like, they are nice. We need some pizzazz back. We need some BM back. And, like, this man spent 30 seconds building up a rug pull of people's emotions. I love it. I'm in. Auto buy.
Auto buy from this man. I wouldn't have guessed it any other way. Now, it's a buy for me too, okay? I think it was something that it wasn't too, like, in your face. It was just, like, the perfect amount of, like, building up the storyline of all these people who come to train and yada, yada, and then just, like, that wasn't enough. Like, it wasn't, like, direct. It wasn't, like, vulgar. It was just, It was cool. It was fun. It was funny. It came out of nowhere. And a game out of nowhere. Like, maybe somebody should stand up and do this in Call of Duty. For me, it's the same. That's a straight buy. No doubt.
It's also
about
crazy because, like, I mean, he mentions it's 1,400 people came to London to compete in that. And, like, that's incredible. If you would have told me 1,400 people, I had, you know, collected Pokemon, trained them, went to a neutral location to compete in them, I would have been like, that's insane. That's absolutely insane. But here we are. And props to him for setting the stage, giving the context, and then shooting your shot, brother. Congrats on the win. Absolute GO status. That is going to bring our first show to an end. We're going to hopefully have many more. Pat thinks we're even going to get all the way up to 1,000. So maybe this is the first of many. Either way, we'll see you on the next one. Peace out.